An obese woman boards a Mafia boss's jet by mistake, falling asleep before takeoff and waking to the coldest eyes she's ever seen. The dangerous crime lord demands to know who sent her to spy on him. But there's an even bigger problem. Her cousin's fiancé was just murdered by his organization, and now both crime families are hunting her down. Trapped in his luxurious villa, for her own protection, she discovers his shocking secret. Behind closed doors, this ruthless killer creates beautiful paintings of women just like her. When her mother is kidnapped, they're forced to pretend they're lovers. But as bullets fly and passion ignites, she uncovers hidden documents suggesting their accidental meeting was actually his elaborate revenge plan against her family. Was every touch, every kiss, every promise just part of his deadly game? Or did the most feared man in Italy actually fall for the woman who was never supposed to enter his world? Through the jet's window, Naples sprawled beneath them, the bay shimmering in late afternoon sunlight that did nothing to warm the ice in Valentina's veins. Her hands trembled in her lap as she tried to process how drastically her day had derailed. Just hours ago, she'd been putting final touches on wedding cakes in Rome. Now she sat across from one of Italy's most dangerous men. Dante hadn't moved, but his stillness only amplified his menace. His gray eyes hadn't left her since Marco's interruption, studying her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. The leather seat creaked as he leaned forward, close enough that she caught the subtle scent of his expensive cologne. "The Gardenia Hotel," he said, his voice deceptively soft. "That's where this wedding you claim to be attending is being held?" Valentina's throat went dry. "Yes," she whispered, her heart hammering against her ribs. "My cousin Sophia's wedding! I'm doing the cake." A muscle ticked in his jaw. "What a remarkable coincidence. The same hotel where a Calabrese soldier was found dead an hour ago." His fingers drummed once on the armrest. "In the kitchen area." I don't know anything about that," Valentina stammered, her mind racing. "Please, I really am just a baker. Check my phone, my emails. Everything's there about the wedding plans." Marco stepped closer, his stance protective of his boss. "Sir, initial search confirms wedding bookings under Sofia Romano. Guest list shows a Valentina Russo as immediate family." "Russo?" Dante tested the name, his expression hardening. "Any relation to Matteo Russo?" The question struck like a physical blow. Valentina hadn't heard her father's name in 20 years, not since his death when she was 8. He was my father, but he died of a heart attack in New York." A dark laugh escaped Dante. "Is that what your mother told you?" He exchanged a loaded look with Marco. "Matteo Russo didn't die in New York. He stole millions from my family and disappeared, apparently to America, with a convenient heart attack story to cover his tracks." The plane touched down with a jolt that matched the shock rolling through Valentina's system. Her entire world tilted on its axis. Her father, a thief, her childhood built on lies. She gripped the armrests as memories realigned themselves. The sudden move from Naples, her mother's persistent money worries despite their comfortable lifestyle, the way she'd freeze when Italy was mentioned. "I didn't know," she whispered, tears burning her eyes. "I swear I didn't know." "Perhaps not," Dante conceded, though his tone remained skeptical. "But your timing is suspect. A Calabrese dead at the same hotel where Matteo Russo's daughter conveniently has legitimate business, after accidentally boarding my private jet despite multiple security checkpoints." The plane taxied to a private hangar, and Valentina glimpsed heavily armed men waiting outside. Her breath came in short gasps. "The wedding is real. Sophia's real. Please, just call the hotel, check with her." "Oh, we will verify everything." Dante's smile didn't reach his eyes. "You'll be staying at my villa until we untangle this web of coincidences. If you're innocent, you have nothing to fear." "I have to finish the wedding cake," she protested weakly, knowing it was futile. "It's in 2 days." "Your cousin will have to find another baker." He stood as the plane stopped, his height commanding in the confined space. "Unless you prefer, I hand you to the Calabrese for questioning. They're less civilized in their methods." Valentina shuddered at the implied threat. "The villa," she whispered, defeat settling heavy in her chest. Marco opened the cabin door, and humid Naples air rushed in. Dante offered his hand to help her up, his grip firm but not painful. The contrast between his elegant manners and casual threats made him even more terrifying. "Welcome to Naples, Miss Russo," he said as they descended the stairs. "I hope for your sake you're telling the truth. I'd hate to find out Matteo's daughter is following in her father's footsteps." The armed men surrounded them instantly, a choreographed dance of protection that spoke of long practice. Valentina's legs shook as she was led to a waiting Range Rover with blacked-out windows. The reality of her situation crashed over her. She was essentially a prisoner of the man her father had apparently betrayed. Her mother must have known the truth all along. Every careful deflection about her father, every worry line when money got tight despite their comfortable life, every time she'd changed the subject when Valentina mentioned visiting Italy, it all made horrible sense now. As the convoy of vehicles pulled away from the hangar, Valentina caught a final glimpse of Naples' beauty beyond the fence. She wondered if she'd ever see it up close, or if her father's sins would be her last memory of her homeland. Beside her, Dante made a quiet phone call in rapid Italian, his voice carrying an authority that needed no translation. She closed her eyes, a tear slipping down her cheek. Somewhere across the city, her cousin was probably wondering why she hadn't arrived yet. Somewhere across an ocean, her mother was probably going about her day, never knowing her carefully constructed lies were unraveling. And here in this car, Valentina was learning that sometimes the most dangerous thing you could do was trust your own history. Through tinted windows, Valentina watched Naples unfold in a blur of sun-baked buildings and glimpses of azure sea. The convoy of black SUVs moved with military precision, Dante's security teams boxing them in from all sides. Her hands trembled in her lap as she tried to make sense of the rapid Italian flowing from Dante's phone conversations. "Sì, il matrimonio calabrese." Wedding. She recognized that word, had practiced it repeatedly while preparing for Sophia's ceremony. But the rest blurred together, her basic Italian deserting her under stress, until another word cut through, clear as crystal. Eliminazione. Elimination. The SUV climbed higher into the hills, overlooking the Bay of Naples, each turn taking them further from the airport terminal where she should have met her cousin. Instead, they pulled into a gated villa with sweeping views of the coastline, the kind of property that spoke of old money and older power. "Wait here," Dante commanded as they parked, his security team spreading across the grounds with practiced efficiency. "I have business to attend to." He strode onto the villa's terrace, phone still pressed to his ear, leaving Valentina alone in the vehicle. Her fingers shook as she finally pulled out her own phone, dreading what she'd find. The screen lit up with notifications, 37 missed calls, dozens of unread texts. The first message from her mother made her blood run cold. They came asking questions, not safe, had to leave, don't come to hotel. She scrolled frantically through the rest. Sophia's messages started with worried questions about her arrival time, then descended into grief-stricken chaos. The words blurred before her eyes. Antonio dead, murder, wedding canceled, Salvatore hit squad. Valentina's stomach lurched. She was sitting in the car of the man whose organization had likely murdered her cousin's fiancé. Her hands pressed against her mouth, stifling a sob as the pieces clicked together. The strange looks between Dante and his security chief on the plane when discussing the Calabrese wedding. The careful questions about her involvement. She wasn't just a random passenger who'd boarded the wrong plane. She was connected to both families now locked in violent conflict. Through the windshield, she watched Dante pace the terrace, his powerful frame silhouetted against the darkening sky. Even from this distance, the lethal grace of his movements was evident. How many deaths had those hands ordered? How many families had he torn apart, like he'd just destroyed Sophia's? The driver's door opened, making her jump. Marco slid behind the wheel, his expression unreadable. Il capo wants you inside. The villa's interior matched its exterior. Old-world luxury with subtle, modern updates. Security cameras disguised as classical sculptures. Reinforced windows behind delicate curtains. Beauty concealing danger, just like the man who owned it. Dante stood at a floor-to-ceiling window, hands clasped behind his back. "You've seen the messages by now," he said without turning. "About Antonio Calabrese." "You killed him," Valentina whispered. "The night before his wedding to my cousin." "Yes." No denial, no justification, just cold certainty. Because they planned to kill me. The wedding was their cover. Gather both families in one place, use the chaos of the celebration to eliminate key Salvatore leadership. Now he turned, gray eyes drilling into her, including me. "I don't believe you." But even as she said it, doubt crept in. She'd helped Sophia plan the reception layout, suggested the best places for the wedding party to stand during toasts. Had she unknowingly helped plot assassination positions? "The Calabreses are already looking for you," Dante continued. "They believe you have information about the venue's security arrangements, which you do whether you realized it or not." Valentina's knees weakened. She gripped the back of a chair for support. those arrangements were for the wedding, for the cake delivery, the photography setup, which showed them every entrance, every blind spot, every opportunity. His voice held no accusation, just statement of fact. Information they very much want to recover now that their original plan failed. Outside, car engines rumbled to life as Dante's security team prepared for movement. Night had fallen fully now, the bay a glitter of lights below. Her phone buzzed with another message from her mother. "They came looking for you, not safe at home, in hiding. Don't come back to hotel." "You'll stay at my estate on the coast," Dante said. "Not a request, a declaration. Under my protection." "Protection? Or imprisonment?" His smile held no warmth. "Both, until I'm certain of your role in all this. The Calabresis won't touch you there, whether to extract information or eliminate a liability." The casual way he referenced her possible murder sent chills down her spine, yet somehow the methodical calculation in his voice was more frightening than any overt threat. This was a man who'd built an empire on careful strategy, who saw people as pieces to be moved or removed from the board, and now she was one of those pieces, trapped between warring families with no safe move left to make. The gray light of dawn painted the Amalfi coast in watercolor hues as the convoy of black SUVs wound their way up the cliffside road. Valentina pressed her forehead against the cool window, exhaustion and fear making her thoughts sluggish. They'd been driving for hours, taking circuitous routes to avoid being followed. The villa that emerged from the morning mist looked like something from a luxury travel magazine, pale stone walls cascading down the cliff face, infinity pools merging with the sea below, terraced gardens bursting with bougainvillea. But the beauty couldn't hide its fortress-like qualities, high walls topped with subtle security systems, strategically positioned guardhouses, cameras disguised as architectural features. "Welcome to Villa Salvatore," Dante said, his deep voice breaking the silence that had stretched between them for hours. "You'll be comfortable here." "Comfortable," Valentina's laugh held an edge of hysteria. "In my gilded cage?" He didn't respond, simply guided her inside with a hand at the small of her back. The touch, though light, carried unmistakable authority. A matronly woman waited in the soaring entrance hall, her silver hair swept into an elegant bun. "I'm Sophia," she said warmly in accented English. "Let me show you to your suite, Cara. You must be exhausted." The guest suite was larger than Valentina's entire apartment back home. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Mediterranean. A massive bed dominated one wall, while a sitting area offered plush chairs and a writing desk. The bathroom featured a freestanding tub big enough for 3 people. "I need to contact my mother," Valentina said, turning to Dante. "She must be worried sick." "Not until we secure communications." His tone brooked no argument. "The Calabresis will be monitoring all channels." Before she could protest further, Sophia returned, pushing a rack of clothing. "Some things to make you comfortable," she explained. "We used the sizes from the photos on your phone." "You went through my phone?" Valentina whirled on Dante, fury momentarily overwhelming fear. "My security team examined everything for our safety." He seemed unmoved by her outrage. "Rest. We'll talk later." Despite her racing thoughts, exhaustion won out. Valentina managed a few hours of fitful sleep before restlessness drove her to explore. The villa was a study in contrasts, priceless art and antiques alongside cutting-edge security systems, delicate Murano glass chandeliers above reinforced windows, beautiful gardens patrolled by armed guards. The staff moved efficiently through their tasks, treating her with careful politeness. From their whispered conversations, she gathered that Dante rarely brought anyone here. This was his sanctuary, his private domain away from the violence of his world. As afternoon shadows lengthened across the terraces, the walls began closing in. Valentina had always handled stress by moving, doing something. Here she was trapped with nothing but her spiraling thoughts. She began watching the staff patterns, the gardener's smoke breaks, the housekeeper's cleaning rotations, the gaps between security patrols. A narrow path down to the sea caught her attention. If she timed it right, heart pounding, Valentina slipped through the villa's service entrance while Sophia was busy in the kitchen. She kept to the shadows of the garden walls, counting seconds between guard passes. The salty breeze grew stronger as she neared the cliff edge. Just a few more steps to the path. The crack of gunfire shattered the peaceful afternoon. 2 men in tactical gear materialized from the decorative shrubbery, weapons raised. Calabrese hitmen coming for her just as Dante had warned. Before she could scream, a darker shadow detached itself from the villa wall. Dante moved like smoke, like death itself. His actions were precise, economical, lethal. 2 shots, 2 bodies hitting the gravel. No wasted motion, no hesitation. Blood spread across the white stones like spilled wine. Dante stood over the fallen men, his expensive suit somehow pristine despite the violence. His expression hadn't changed once during the entire encounter. He approached her slowly, as if trying not to startle a wild animal. Valentina's emotions warred. Terror at the casual way he'd ended 2 lives, yet an undeniable fascination with the lethal grace of his protection. This dangerous man had killed to keep her safe. His thumb brushed her cheek, wiping away a speck of blood she hadn't realized was there. The touch was surprisingly gentle from hands capable of such violence. "Now you understand," he said quietly. "The Calabreses want information from you. Then they'll kill you for revenge. They believe you're under my protection." His gray eyes held hers. "Leave, and you won't survive a day. Your only safety is with me." The setting sun painted the sky in shades of blood and gold. Valentina stared at the bodies being efficiently removed by Dante's security team, at the villa rising behind them like a beautiful prison, at the man beside her who represented both danger and protection. The terrible truth settled over her like a shadow. She was trapped in his world now, with no way back to her old life. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Valentina's suite as she paced, each step marking another moment of captivity. 3 days had passed since her failed escape attempt, and despite the room's luxury, its walls seemed to close in a little more each day. At least she'd finally been allowed to speak with her mother through Dante's secure channels. The brief video call had confirmed her mother's safety at a Salvatore-protected hotel, but offered no timeline for a reunion. "Stay strong, Piccola," her mother had said, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We'll be together when it's safe." When would that be? The uncertainty gnawed at her more than the confinement. A gentle knock interrupted her thoughts. Sophia entered with a breakfast tray laden with fresh pastries and coffee, her weathered face creasing with concern at Valentina's obvious restlessness. "The days are long when we're idle," Sophia said, setting down the tray. "Have you visited our library? 3 generations of Salvatores have collected. Books there, many on cooking and baking too." Valentina's interest sparked despite herself. "Really?" Sophia nodded. "2nd floor, east wing, the staff can show you." With nothing else to occupy her mind, Valentina followed Sophia's suggestion after breakfast. The library proved to be a 2-story marvel of dark wood and leather-bound volumes. True to Sophia's word, one section housed an impressive collection of culinary texts, including rare historical volumes on Italian pastry arts. Hours slipped away as Valentina lost herself in centuries-old techniques and recipes. She found herself taking notes, imagining how to incorporate traditional methods into her modern designs. For the first time since her capture, the constant anxiety receded, replaced by creative excitement. As evening approached, however, the familiar restlessness returned. She needed to move, to explore beyond the few approved areas of the villa. The staff had established clear patterns over the past days, which wings were acceptable, which were quietly discouraged through redirected conversations and subtle guidance. One section in particular drew her curiosity. The West Wing, where conversations died when she approached, and staff members suddenly remembered urgent tasks elsewhere. Today, with the setting sun painting the corridors in gold, she noticed a partially open door in that forbidden zone. Common sense warned her to turn back, but after days of controlled movements and restricted spaces, the mystery proved irresistible. Checking that the hallway was empty, Valentina slipped inside. She found herself in a large studio, bathed in natural light from floor-to-ceiling windows. Easels held half-finished canvases, while completed paintings lined the walls. The rich scent of oils and turpentine filled the air. But it was the subject matter that stopped her breath. Dozens of paintings featured full-figured women, captured in moments of both ordinary life and ethereal fantasy. A curvy woman reading in a window seat, sunlight playing across her curves. Another dancing in a storm, her abundant form celebrating movement instead of hiding it. Each piece radiated a sense of reverence, as if the artist saw beyond conventional beauty to something deeper and more profound. The technical skill was extraordinary. These weren't amateur works. They displayed mastery of light, composition, and human form that spoke of years of dedicated study. One painting in particular drew her closer. A plus-size woman in a garden at twilight, her face turned away, but her body language conveying such vulnerability and strength that Valentina felt tears prick her eyes. The soft click of the door closing made her spin around. Dante stood there, his usual mask of control slipping to reveal something raw and uncertain. For the first time, she saw him without his carefully maintained walls. "Those aren't for guests to see." His voice was quiet but strained. "You painted these?" It wasn't a question. The evidence of his talent surrounded them. "Yes." The admission seemed to cost him something. "They're beautiful." Valentina gestured to the Twilight Garden piece. "The way you capture emotion through body language, the use of light to create mood, you're incredibly talented." A complex mix of emotions crossed his face: pride, discomfort, and something deeper she couldn't quite read. Before he could respond, the door burst open. Marco entered with swift efficiency, holding a secure tablet. "Sir, urgent situation." The vulnerability vanished from Dante's expression as he took the tablet. His face transformed into something terrible as he viewed the screen. Murderous rage, replacing all traces of the artist she'd glimpsed moments before. Without speaking, he turned the tablet toward Valentina. A video call showed her mother bound to a chair, terror visible in her eyes above the gag. A man in an expensive suit stood behind her. She recognized him as one of the Calabrese lieutenants from wedding photos Sophia had shared. "They took her from our protected hotel an hour ago." Dante's voice was ice. "They believe you're my lover, not my prisoner. They'll use her to get to you, and through you, to me." The room spun. Valentina's legs gave out and she collapsed into a nearby chair, her mother's frightened eyes burning in her vision. Her previous captivity had been a gilded cage. Now it was a trap that had ensnared not just her, but the person she loved most in the world. Midnight cast long shadows across Dante's study, the lamplight creating pools of warmth in the darkness. The heavy wooden desk between them caught the glow, highlighting maps and documents scattered across its surface. Valentina sat across from him, her eyes red-rimmed, but determined as they worked through their options. She'd been crying earlier, but had wiped away her tears with angry swipes of her fingers, refusing to give in to helplessness. The Calabrese's video message had been clear: 48 hours to exchange Dante's supposed girlfriend for her mother in a public square. The crude video had shown her mother bound to a chair, bruised but alive, her eyes reflecting the same stubborn resilience Valentina now displayed. "They expect me to choose between surrendering you or watching them kill your mother." Dante's voice was controlled, but his fingers tapped an agitated rhythm on his desk. His jaw clenched tight enough that Valentina could see the muscle jumping beneath his scar. "That gives us an advantage." "How is their control an advantage?" Valentina's voice cracked, her hands clutching the armrests of her chair so tightly her knuckles had gone white. The exhaustion of the past days showed in the dark circles under her eyes and the slump of her shoulders. "Because we can use their misconception." He leaned forward, gray eyes intent, focused with predatory sharpness. The lamplight caught the silver flecks in his irises, making them gleam like polished steel. "Rather than deny our relationship, we confirm it. You become my partner publicly, completely. The Calabreses know I never surrender what's mine. It forces them to negotiate rather than execute while my team locates your mother." The plan took shape through the night. Maps spread across the desk as Dante detailed likely locations where they might hold her mother. His long fingers traced routes between warehouses and abandoned properties owned by Calabrese shell companies. He made phone calls in rapid Italian, deploying teams with quiet efficiency. His security teams would search while they maintained the deception. Valentina absorbed every detail, occasionally offering insights about her mother's habits or preferences that might help narrow the search. Despite her fatigue, her mind remained sharp, processing information with the same precision she applied to her complex cake designs. By dawn, as golden light spilled through the study windows, painting Dante's harsh features in softer hues, they had refined every detail. The warm glow caught in Valentina's dark hair as she leaned over a map, marking potential locations with red circles. But one crucial element remained. Their performance had to be flawless. They needed to convince hardened criminals that they were truly lovers, not strangers thrown together by circumstance. "Sophia will help you prepare," Dante said, rubbing his tired eyes. The sleepless night had left shadows beneath them, though his focus never wavered. "You'll need a wardrobe fitting your new position, and knowledge of our family dynamics. Tonight's dinner with my inner circle must be convincing." The day passed in a whirlwind of preparation. Sophia arrived with racks of designer clothing, helping Valentina select pieces that both flattered her curves and projected the power expected of Dante Salvatore's woman. Valentina ran her fingers over fabrics more expensive than anything she'd ever owned. Silk that felt like water, cashmere soft as clouds, leather supple as butter. Between fittings, she received crash courses in the complex hierarchy of the Salvatore organization. Sophia drilled her on names, relationships, and long-standing feuds that any woman in Dante's life would know intimately. Marco is loyal but quick-tempered, Sophia explained as she pinned the hem of a dress. His wife Lucia hates being second to his devotion to Dante. Remember that, and never leave them alone together at events. But the most surreal moments came with Dante himself. They spent hours in his private sitting room, exchanging intimate details that any couple would know about each other. She learned he took his espresso with exactly 1 sugar, despite his sweet tooth, that he indulged only in private, that he secretly hated opera, considering it a betrayal of his Italian heritage. He showed her the jagged scar on his shoulder from falling out of an olive tree at age 7, his grandmother's panicked face as she'd rushed to help him being his first clear childhood memory. In turn, she found herself sharing more than necessary for their deception. She told him about the joy she found in creating wedding cakes, making dreams edible, the way she lost herself in the precision of piping delicate flowers, each petal a tiny work of art, the constant battle with clients who questioned whether a plus-size woman could create beautiful things, their thinly veiled surprise when they saw her portfolio, the way her mother had worked multiple jobs to put her through culinary school, believing in her talent when no one else did, sacrificing sleep and comfort to fund her dreams. She never once complained, Valentina said softly, staring down at her hands. Not even when she was so tired she fell asleep at the kitchen table, waiting for me to come home from late classes. Dante listened with unexpected intensity, asking questions that showed genuine interest rather than mere information gathering. He wanted to know her favorite flavors to work with, her creative process, how she translated clients' stories into edible art. Several times she caught him watching her with an expression that seemed to go beyond their planned performance, something curious and almost hungry in his gaze, as though he were memorizing parts of her beyond what their charade required. As evening approached, Sophia helped Valentina into a black dress that draped her curves elegantly, the fabric soft as water against her skin. The neckline dipped just low enough to be alluring without being obvious, while the cut emphasized her hourglass figure. Sophia fastened a diamond pendant at her throat, one of Dante's mother's pieces, she explained in hushed tones, and stepped back with approval. "You look like you belong at his side," she said, adjusting a lock of Valentina's hair. "Remember, you're not playing a role. Tonight you are his woman. Own it." The drive to Naples' most exclusive restaurant passed in tense silence. Valentina's heart hammered against her ribs as the sleek black car wove through narrow streets. She felt Dante's hand at the small of her back as they entered, his touch both possessive and steadying. The warmth of his palm seeped through the thin fabric of her dress, anchoring her when she felt like she might float away from sheer terror. The maitre d' led them through the main dining room with practiced discretion, whispers following in their wake like ripples behind a shark. Eyes tracked their movement, some curious, some fearful, all aware of exactly who Dante Salvatore was and what his appearance meant. The private room held 8 of Dante's most trusted captains and their wives. The scrutiny was immediate and intense, a physical weight pressing against Valentina's skin. She felt their evaluation of her size, her American heritage, her complete unsuitability as partner to their formidable leader. These were people who had killed for Dante, who expected his choices to reflect their organization's power. The women assessed her dress, her jewelry, the way she carried herself, searching for weakness. The men looked between her and Dante, searching for explanation. The tension thickened as they took their seats at the head of the long table. Then Dante did something unexpected. He pulled her chair closer until their shoulders touched, his arm draped around her with casual intimacy. His cologne wrapped around her, spice and sandalwood mingling with something uniquely him. His voice carried authority as he addressed the table, silencing all murmured conversations. "The Calabreses believe they can take what's mine." His fingers found hers atop the white tablecloth, intertwining with deliberate visibility. The strength in his hand contradicted the gentleness of his grip. "Tonight, we show them why that's a fatal mistake." The gesture was calculated for his captain's benefit, a clear marking of territory, but his thumb stroked across her knuckles with surprising gentleness, a private reassurance amid the public display. The touch sent an unwanted shiver through Valentina's body, one that had nothing to do with their carefully constructed performance and everything to do with the man beside her. Her pulse jumped beneath his fingers, and from the slight tightening of his grip, she knew he'd felt it too. Morning sunlight streamed through the villa's windows as Valentina stared at her image, splashed across Italian tabloid headlines. "Il nuovo amore di Salvatore," declared one, featuring a photo of Dante's arm wrapped possessively around her waist as they entered the restaurant. Others showed intimate moments she hadn't even noticed being captured. His fingers brushing her cheek, her genuine laugh at something he'd whispered, their hands intertwined on the table. "They're convinced," Dante said, tossing more newspapers onto the breakfast table. "The Calabreses are already requesting formal negotiations." Marco entered with a secure tablet displaying surveillance photos. "We've narrowed her mother's location to this warehouse outside Naples. 2 more days to confirm guard rotations and access points." Valentina's hands trembled as she studied the grainy images. 2 days? "Which means maintaining our performance," Dante replied. "Starting with Nonna this afternoon." The drive to his grandmother's estate wound through olive groves and vineyards. Dante used the time to prepare her, his usual commanding tone softening when speaking of the woman who raised him after his parents' murder. "Nonna sees everything, he warned. She'll know if we're not convincing." "No pressure," Valentina muttered, smoothing her sundress nervously. The estate appeared around a curve, a centuries-old villa with worn stone steps and climbing roses. As they approached the entrance, Dante's entire demeanor shifted. His shoulders relaxed, the dangerous edge in his eyes mellowing to something almost gentle. An elegant woman in her mid-80s waited in the doorway. Her silver hair swept into a neat chignon. Despite her age, she carried herself with regal bearing. Dante moved immediately to help her down the steps toward the garden, his touch careful and reverent. "Nonna, this is Valentina," he said in Italian, his voice warmer than Valentina had ever heard it. The matriarch's sharp eyes studied her with unsettling intensity. After a long moment, she smiled. "Come, Bella, help an old woman gather herbs for lunch." In the kitchen garden, away from Dante, Nonna moved with surprising agility between raised beds bursting with basil and oregano. "The rosemary's too high for these old bones," she said, gesturing to a tall plant. "Would you reach it, dear?" As Valentina stretched for the herbs, Nonna spoke quietly. "I know why you're here. The Calabreses took your mother." Valentina froze. Peace, child. I've watched my grandson navigate dangerous waters his whole life." Her weathered hands expertly stripped rosemary leaves from stems. "But he's not pretending as much as he thinks. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he watches you." Before Valentina could process this, Nonna pressed the fragrant herbs into her hands. "Now, help me make proper Italian lunch. Show me if Americans can cook." The afternoon passed in a haze of cooking lessons and subtle tests. Valentina found herself relaxing despite the stakes, drawn in by Nonna's blend of aristocratic dignity and grandmotherly warmth. She caught Dante watching them several times, something unreadable in his expression. Back at the villa that night, Valentina found him alone on the terrace. The moon cast silver light across his sharp features as he studied security plans, a glass of whiskey untouched beside him. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything you're doing to save my mother." He looked up, and for once didn't immediately mask his expression. "Family is everything. Yours matters because—" He stopped, something vulnerable flickering across his face before disappearing. The moment stretched between them, heavy with unspoken things. Then Sophia appeared in the doorway. "Scusi, Don Salvatore. The Calabreses have confirmed tomorrow's meeting." Valentina turned to leave, her heart racing for reasons she couldn't explain. Dante's voice stopped her at the door. "Wear the blue dress tomorrow," he said quietly. "It matches your eyes." She glanced back, but he had already returned to his papers, his profile sharp against the night sky. Yet that simple observation from a man who calculated every word, who noticed everything, suggested he saw her differently than she'd imagined. In her suite, Valentina hung the blue dress carefully. Tomorrow would bring negotiations that could save or condemn her mother. She should focus on that alone. But her mind kept returning to the way Dante's expression had softened when he looked at her in the moonlight, how his touch lingered longer than necessary for their performance. She recalled Nonna's words about him not pretending. The matriarch had seen something Valentina was afraid to acknowledge, that somewhere between the fear and manipulation, reality had begun blurring with deception. The real danger wasn't just the Calabreses or her mother's captivity, but the way her heart raced when Dante entered a room, how she found herself wanting their performance to hold truth. Tomorrow would decide everything. Yet as she prepared for bed, Valentina realized the outcome she feared most wasn't failure, but success. Because once her mother was safe, She'd no longer have reason to stay. And somehow, despite everything, the thought of leaving felt increasingly impossible. The morning sun cast long shadows across the monastery's ancient stones as their convoy approached. Valentina's hands twisted nervously in her lap, the silk of her blue dress cool against her skin. Dante sat beside her in the armored SUV, his presence both reassuring and terrifying. "Remember," he said, his voice low and controlled, "Pietro will try to provoke emotional responses. Show nothing but calm devotion to me. Any crack in our performance endangers your mother." Valentina nodded, focusing on keeping her breathing steady. The dress Dante had chosen fit perfectly, making her feel elegant despite her curves. Sophia had styled her hair in sophisticated waves, applied makeup that emphasized her eyes. She looked every bit the crime boss's lover, even if her heart raced with fear. As their vehicles pulled into the monastery's circular drive, Dante's security team moved with practiced precision, securing the perimeter. The historic building had been converted into an exclusive hotel, its stone walls now housing luxury suites instead of monks' cells. Today, it would serve as neutral ground between two deadly forces. Before exiting the vehicle, Dante did something that caught Valentina completely off guard. He leaned close, his lips brushing her temple in a gentle kiss. "Trust me, cara mia," he whispered, his breath warm against her skin. "Play your role, but stay within my reach at all times." The courtyard stretched before them, its medieval architecture a stark contrast to the modern security equipment and armed guards positioned strategically around the space. Pietro Calabresi stood with his contingent, hatred radiating from his rigid posture, his gaze locked onto Dante with undisguised loathing. Valentina's attention caught on a laptop setup near the Calabresi group. Multiple surveillance feeds played across the screen. Her heart jumped when she spotted her mother in one of them, alive, though clearly distressed, in what appeared to be a warehouse setting. "Mr. Salvatore," Pietro's voice dripped with false courtesy. "How generous of you to grace us with your presence, and the lovely Ms. Russo as well." Dante's hand settled possessively at the small of Valentina's back as they approached the central meeting area. "Let's skip the pleasantries, Pietro. State your terms." "Simple enough." Pietro's smile didn't reach his eyes. The disputed territory in the Eastern District, plus Ms. Russo's return to her family. In exchange, her mother goes free. "No!" Dante's response came instantly, his tone brooking no argument. "She is mine now, non-negotiable." The conviction in his voice sent shivers down Valentina's spine. If she didn't know better, she'd believe his possessive claim herself. "Come now," Pietro pressed. "Surely one American pastry chef isn't worth—" Valentina caught the flash of red light on Dante's chest before her mind fully processed what it meant. Pure instinct drove her to shove him sideways, just as the first shot cracked through the air. Chaos erupted instantly. Gunfire exploded from multiple directions as black-clad figures repelled into the courtyard. Neither Salvatore nor Calabresi colors, these were Colombians, making their play to eliminate both families' leadership in one strike. Dante moved with lethal grace, spinning Valentina behind him as bullets peppered the stone around them. She felt the impact as one struck his shoulder, saw the blood beginning to seep through his perfectly tailored jacket. Yet he didn't falter, pushing her behind a thick column as he drew his weapon. Two attackers converged on their position. Dante eliminated them with mechanical precision, his injured shoulder seemingly forgotten. But Valentina saw the growing darkness spreading across his suit, the way his breathing had grown slightly labored. A third assailant appeared, weapon trained directly at Valentina. Dante moved without hesitation, taking the bullet meant for her in his side. Even as he staggered, he maintained his protective stance, refusing to expose her to danger. The firefight seemed to last forever, yet was probably only minutes. Eventually, the combined security forces of both families drove back the Colombian assault team. The courtyard fell silent except for the sounds of wounded men and urgent commands being issued through earpieces. Valentina caught Dante as he finally allowed himself to collapse, cradling his head in her lap. Her blue dress, the one he'd chosen to match her eyes, was now stained crimson with his blood. His normally sharp gaze had grown unfocused, skin pale from blood loss. "Dante," she whispered, pressing her hands against his wounds. "Hold on. Please." His bloodied fingers found hers, squeezing with surprising strength. "Get her mother," he managed, his voice rough with pain. "Tonight, no matter what happens to me." Then his eyes rolled back, consciousness finally deserting him as medical teams rushed forward. Valentina held onto his hand, her world narrowing to the thready pulse beneath her fingers and the growing stain of red across blue silk. The pre-dawn stillness of Dante's bedroom was broken only by his labored breathing and the quiet beeping of medical monitors. Valentina adjusted the cool compress on his forehead, her own exhaustion forgotten as she watched his restless movements. 18 hours had passed since bullets tore through his flesh, protecting her from harm. The private doctor checked his vitals again, speaking in hushed tones. The bullet missed major organs, but the blood loss is significant. His fever needs careful monitoring. In his delirium, Dante's carefully constructed walls crumbled. His mumbled Italian shifted between past and present, calling out for parents long dead, issuing protective orders for his siblings, and repeatedly whispering Valentina's name with unexpected tenderness. Between fever spikes, his lucid moments focused solely on her mother's extraction. "Marco," he'd demand, voice hoarse. "Status report." "Proceeding as planned," Marco would answer from his vigilant post by the door. "The attack hasn't compromised the operation." Valentina dabbed sweat from Dante's brow, studying the scar along his jawline, somehow more vulnerable in his unconscious state. His usual mask of control had dissolved, revealing the man beneath the monster everyone feared. As midday approached, his fever finally broke. The relief left Valentina lightheaded, and she succumbed to exhaustion in the plush chair beside his bed. Her dreams were troubled, filled with gunfire and blood-stained blue silk. She woke to the weight of his gaze. For a moment, before his walls reconstructed themselves, she glimpsed something raw and unguarded in his gray eyes. "You saved my life," he said quietly, his voice rough from disuse. "No one's done that before." The admission hung between them, heavy with implications neither was ready to examine. As evening approached, Dante insisted on moving to his office, despite the doctor's protests. "The extraction team is in position," he stated firmly. "I don't rest while operations are active." Valentina helped him dress, their forced intimacy creating a different kind of tension. Her fingers trembled slightly as she worked the buttons of his shirt, unavoidably brushing against his torso. Old scars mapped a history of violence across his skin. Bullet wounds, knife marks, stories written in scar tissue. His office was a fortress of technology and security measures. Multiple screens displayed tactical information, while encrypted communications crackled with updates. In the tense waiting, Dante's usual reserve cracked. "I was 14, he said unexpectedly, staring into middle distance. "When they killed my parents, made me watch." His voice carried the weight of long-buried pain. "Left me with 2 younger siblings to protect and a collapsed empire to rebuild." Valentina remained silent, sensing this confession required her stillness. Everything since then, every act of violence, every brutal decision, it was survival, protection. His hands clenched on the armrests. "I became what was necessary to ensure no one could hurt my family again." The raw honesty stripped away her remaining preconceptions. She saw not a cruel man who chose violence, but a boy forced to become dangerous to protect what he loved. The secure line crackled. "Package secured," Marco's voice reported. "Target extracted safely. No casualties." The words took a moment to penetrate. Her mother was safe. Months of fear and uncertainty collapsed under the weight of relief. Valentina moved without conscious thought, intending only to express her gratitude. Instead, something electric sparked between them. His hands, capable of dealing death without hesitation, cradled her face with devastating gentleness. The kiss began as comfort, but transformed instantly into something fierce and hungry. Years of isolation and carefully maintained control dissolved under the heat of their shared need. His touch was reverent against her curves, erasing a lifetime of insecurity with his obvious desire. She traced the scars that told his story, accepting both the violence and vulnerability they represented. They found in each other's bodies the surrender neither permitted themselves elsewhere. His strength became tenderness. Her softness revealed its own kind of power. In the secure darkness of his office, surrounded by the technology of warfare and protection, they discovered a different kind of safety in each other's arms. Time seemed to stop as they explored this new territory between them. The dangerous man who commanded an empire and the woman who saw beyond his armor found common ground in shared loneliness and unexpected trust. Each touch carried the weight of their separate struggles, his battle between protection and brutality, her journey of self-acceptance and strength. The outside world faded away, leaving only the sound of their breathing and the gentle exploration of hands mapping unfamiliar landscapes. The passion between them built slowly, deepened by the knowledge of what it meant to finally let someone pass their carefully constructed defenses. Morning sunlight painted golden stripes across Dante's bedroom, warming Valentina's skin where the silk sheets had slipped away. His arm lay heavy across her curves, possessive even in sleep. She traced the bullet graze on his shoulder, still angry and red from yesterday's firefight. Last night replayed in her mind the way his dangerous hands had turned gentle on her body, how he'd worshipped every curve she'd spent years being insecure about. The fierce possession in his kisses had matched the unexpected tenderness in his touch. Something fundamental had shifted between them, transforming their careful pretense into something raw and real. A sharp knock interrupted her thoughts. "Boss," Marco's voice carried urgency. "The extraction team has arrived with Ms. Russo." Valentina's heart leaped. She scrambled for her clothes, fingers trembling as she buttoned yesterday's blouse. Dante watched her with hooded eyes, his expression unreadable as he pulled on a fresh suit with practiced efficiency. The villa's marble foyer felt endless as Valentina rushed toward the entrance. Elena Russo stood there, wrapped in a borrowed cardigan, her usual perfect appearance disheveled from captivity. Though physically unharmed, shadows of fear lingered in her eyes. "Mama!" Valentina crashed into her mother's arms. They clung to each other, tears flowing freely as weeks of terror and separation poured out. Elena's hands shook as she stroked her daughter's hair, murmuring soft reassurances in mixed English and Italian. Dante observed their reunion from the doorway, his powerful frame filling the space. His face remained carefully neutral, but something flickered in his gray eyes as he watched them embrace. "You need rest," he stated, nodding to Sophia, who waited nearby. "A suite has been prepared." "No." Elena straightened, wiping her tears. "We need to talk. All of us. Now." Her voice carried an edge of desperate resignation. "There are things I should have told you long ago, Valentina." Dante led them to his study, where morning sun streamed through bullet-resistant windows. Elena perched rigidly on the leather sofa, while Valentina sat beside her. Dante remained standing, his presence dominating the room. "Your father!" Elena began, her hands twisting together. "What I told you about him, it wasn't true. Any of it." Valentina's stomach clenched. "What do you mean?" "Matteo wasn't a financial advisor. He was the Salvatore family's chief accountant." Elena's words tumbled out, 20 years of secrets breaking free. "He didn't die of a heart attack. He stole millions from the organization and fled with us to America. New names, new identities, new lives built on stolen money." The room spun slightly as Valentina processed this. "The inheritance that paid for culinary school? My bakery startup costs?" "All stolen Salvatore funds," Elena confirmed, her voice small. Valentina turned to Dante, who watched the scene unfold with clinical detachment. "You knew?" "Since you boarded my jet," he confirmed. "Your eyes, they're identical to Matteo's in our records, too distinctive to be coincidence." Elena slid to her knees before Dante, hands clasped in supplication. "Please, I can return what's left. We lived modestly, invested carefully. Most of it—" "Stop!" Dante's command cut through her pleading. "Your husband's theft would traditionally demand blood payment." His gaze shifted to Valentina, who stood frozen between them. But circumstances have changed. Heat flooded Valentina's cheeks as memories of last night crashed over her. The way he'd touched her, tasted her, made her feel precious instead of just protected. Sophia appeared to escort Elena to her suite, leaving Valentina alone with Dante. The air felt thick with unspoken accusations. "Was that what last night was about?" she demanded, voice cracking. "Payment for my father's crimes? Retribution taken in flesh instead of blood?" Pain flashed across Dante's face before his expression hardened to granite. "I've never needed to coerce a woman into my bed," he stated, voice dropping dangerously. "Low, what happened between us was separate from business." He moved to the door, pausing with his hand on the handle. "Your father's debt will be settled, Valentina. I'll inform you of my terms tomorrow." The door closed with quiet finality, leaving Valentina alone in his study. She sank into a chair, mind reeling. Everything she'd believed about her life, her father's death, their modest but comfortable existence, her hard-earned success, had been built on carefully constructed lies. And now she'd given her heart to the very man her father had betrayed, the dangerous head of a criminal empire who held both her future and her family's fate in his scarred hands. Her fingers traced her lips, still tender from his kisses. Business and pleasure, debt and desire, truth and lies. Everything had become hopelessly entangled. The safe, simple life she'd thought she lived had never really existed. Instead, she'd been dancing on the edge of this dangerous world her entire life, unaware until now that she'd always belonged to it. Dawn crept through the villa windows as Valentina paced her suite, sleep having eluded her entirely. The revelations about her father churned in her mind, tangled with memories of Dante's touch, his unexpected tenderness now shadowed by questions of motive and manipulation. A soft knock at 9 brought Sophia with breakfast she couldn't stomach and a cream-colored envelope bearing the Salvatore family seal. Inside, formal cardstock carried a precise message in Dante's elegant hand. Your presence is requested in my study at noon to discuss terms. The businesslike tone felt like a door closing, erasing the intimacy they'd shared mere hours ago. Valentina spent the next hours preparing herself with deliberate care, selecting a sleek charcoal dress that projected professional confidence. Her mother found her applying the last touches of makeup. "We could still run," Elena pleaded, wringing her hands. "I have contacts in South America, resources hidden away." "Running would make us permanent targets," Valentina replied, meeting her mother's worried gaze in the mirror. "The Salvatore reach is global. We'd never be truly safe." "You don't understand what these people are capable of, Cara." "I've seen exactly what they're capable of," Valentina countered, remembering Dante's lethal efficiency during the monastery attack and the bullet he'd taken protecting her. "Running isn't the answer." At precisely noon, she entered Dante's study, her heels silent on thick carpets. He sat behind his massive desk, impeccable in a charcoal suit that inadvertently matched her dress. The intimate man who'd held her through the night was gone, replaced by the calculating crime boss, surrounded by financial portfolios and architectural renderings. "Sit!" he commanded without looking up from his papers. Valentina took the chair facing his desk, spine straight, hands folded in her lap to hide their trembling. "Your father stole approximately 12 million euros," Dante began without preamble. "At current exchange rates and compound interest over 20 years, the debt approaches 30 million. He finally looked up, his gray eyes unreadable. "However, I'm proposing an alternative to traditional repayment." He spread several documents across the desk, business profiles, market analyses, property listings. "My investigation into your background revealed something interesting. Despite limited resources and industry bias, you've built a reputation for exceptional culinary innovation. Your cake designs have garnered critical acclaim, even if your current business model hasn't achieved financial success." Valentina blinked, surprised by this detailed knowledge of her career. "You investigated my bakery?" "I investigate everything." His lips quirked slightly. "Your talent is being wasted on small-scale wedding commissions. I'm proposing a partnership, a chain of high-end pastisserie across Italy's major cities, beginning in Naples. Your recipes, your designs, your creative direction, Salvatore management and resources." He pulled up digital renderings on a sleek monitor. The businesses would be legitimate enterprises, profitable through genuine success while providing additional benefits for family interests. The implication of money laundering was clear but delicately stated. "In exchange for my father's debt," Valentina clarified, "the debt would be considered paid. You and your mother would receive permanent Salvatore protection. Your creative vision would have unlimited resources to achieve its full potential." As afternoon faded to evening, they drove to Naples' fashion district, where Dante led her into an empty corner storefront. High ceilings, historic architectural details, and expansive windows created an elegant canvas. Valentina found herself automatically evaluating the space, where display cases would best feature her creations, kitchen layout requirements, optimal customer flow patterns. The basement level could be converted to a temperature-controlled workspace for sugar sculptures and chocolate showpieces, Dante observed, clearly having researched her specialties. He pulled out a tablet showing her sophisticated digital mock-ups. Her intricate cake designs were reimagined as gallery installations, elevated from mere desserts to celebrated culinary artistry. "Your work deserves to be featured in fine art spaces, not just reception halls." Valentina's breath caught. No one had ever understood this dream she'd barely admitted to herself. To have her edible artistry recognized as legitimate creative expression, rather than dismissed as mere confectionery. How had he seen this core truth about her ambitions? Street lamps cast warm light through the windows as darkness fell outside. Dante moved closer, his presence filling her awareness. "Last night wasn't business," he said quietly, echoing her earlier accusation. "But this partnership can remain purely professional if that's what you want from me." The choice he offered hung in the air between them. She could accept his business proposition while maintaining emotional distance, or acknowledge the deeper connection neither could continue denying. Valentina studied his face in the gentle lamplight, seeing past the calculated crime boss to the artist who painted curvy women with reverence, the man who'd taken a bullet to protect her. Moving deliberately, she crossed the empty shop floor until she stood before him. Rising on tiptoe, she pressed her lips to his, answering his question without words. His arms came around her immediately, drawing her closer as the kiss deepened. "Both," she whispered against his mouth. "I want both." His fingers tangled in her hair as he claimed her lips again, the empty storefront bearing witness to this merger of business and pleasure, pragmatism and passion. The late August sun streamed through the pasticceria's newly installed windows, casting golden light across the imported marble countertops. Valentina moved through the space with purposeful energy, directing contractors on the final placement of display cases while consulting her tablet for measurements. "The lighting above the chocolate fountain needs to be adjusted 3 degrees left," she called out, her confidence in her vision evident in every instruction, "and the temperature control for the gelato cases needs recalibration." From his position in the doorway, Dante watched her with unmistakable pride. The transformation of both the space and their relationship over the past 6 weeks still amazed him. What had begun as a business arrangement to settle an old debt had evolved into something neither had expected. The contractors responded to Valentina's directions with respectful efficiency, having quickly learned that her attention to detail matched their Salvatore employer's exacting standards. She'd designed every aspect of the shop to blend classic Neapolitan elegance with modern functionality, creating a space that would serve both its legitimate and discreet purposes perfectly. "The media confirmations came through this morning," Dante said, approaching her as she reviewed the finishing touches on the Baroque-inspired ceiling moldings. "Every major publication in Italy will cover the opening. Your innovative takes on traditional pastries have created quite a buzz." Valentina smiled, thinking of the experimental recipes she'd developed. Cannoli filled with American-style cheesecake cream, sfogliatella reimagined with maple and pecan. "The food critics won't know what hit them." After finalizing the last details with the design team, they headed to Lorenzo's villa in the hills above Naples. The meeting with Dante's siblings marked a significant step in their relationship, one that made Valentina's heart race more than any business negotiation. Lorenzo's home reflected its owner's refined taste, modern art complementing centuries-old architecture. His wife, Isabella, greeted them warmly while their young children peeked curiously around corners at their uncle's mysterious new companion. Bianca arrived last, her designer dress and perfect makeup belying the shrewd business mind that had helped legitimize much of the Salvatore fortune. She embraced her brother before turning an assessing gaze on Valentina. "So, you're the pastry chef who's captured my brother's attention," Bianca said, her tone friendly but evaluating. "I've reviewed your business proposals. Very impressive structure for legitimate profit margins." Over dinner, Valentina observed the siblings' interaction with fascination. Their conversation flowed easily between business matters and personal teasing, years of shared history evident in every exchange. Yet beneath the warmth lay steel. These were survivors who'd protected each other through unimaginable circumstances. "Remember when Dante tried to teach us oil painting?" Lorenzo laughed, refilling wine glasses. Bianca threw her palette at him after he criticized her technique. "The paint stains never came out of that shirt," Dante admitted, his usual severity softening as he shared childhood memories. The drive back to the villa was peaceful, city lights twinkling below as they wound through the coastal roads. Instead of heading inside, Dante led Valentina to a separate building near his private studio. "I had this converted while you were focused on the pasticceria," he explained, producing a set of keys. "You need your own space for experimentation." The studio took Valentina's breath away. One side equipped as a test kitchen with top-of-line equipment, the other set up with easels and painting supplies. "For your lessons," Dante added quietly, "though you're already showing natural talent." Their lovemaking that night held a different quality, less desperate claiming, and more tender exploration. Afterward, lying in the moonlight filtering through floor-to-ceiling windows, Valentina finally voiced her deepest fear. "Sometimes I worry this is temporary," she whispered. "That your attraction to someone with my body type is just novelty that will fade." Dante propped himself up on one elbow, his free hand tracing the curve of her hip with reverence. "Look in my studio sometime at the dates on those paintings," he said softly. "I've painted women like you my entire life, beauty with strength, softness with power. You're not my exception, Valentina. You're what I've always wanted but never believed I deserved. The buzz of his secure phone interrupted the moment. Though Dante tried to ignore it, Valentina caught the brief tension in his shoulders as he read Marco's message. Just finalizing security details for the opening, he assured her, setting the phone aside. But something in his gray eyes flickered with concern before he could mask it. Valentina wanted to press him further, but exhaustion from the long day was already pulling her toward sleep. She curled closer into his embrace, trying to focus on the solid warmth of him rather than the seed of worry his reaction had planted. The morning sun filtered through the villa's windows, casting long shadows across the empty side of the bed where Dante usually slept. Valentina reached for his warmth, finding instead a handwritten note on his pillow. His elegant script explained he was handling last-minute security concerns before tomorrow's grand opening. She stretched luxuriously, reflecting on how these past weeks had transformed her life. The happiness she'd found felt almost surreal, her creative vision for the pasticceria taking shape, her relationship with Dante deepening beyond anything she'd imagined possible, and his family accepting her with increasing warmth. Just yesterday, Nonna Salvatore had spent hours teaching her the intricate preparation of traditional Salvatore family cannoli, a closely guarded recipe passed down through generations. The elderly matriarch's hands had guided hers through the delicate process of rolling the shells, her approval evident in every shared secret technique. With Dante occupied, Valentina decided to use the morning productively. The pasticceria's opening required meticulous coordination. Staff schedules, delivery timing, and backup supplies, stored in Dante's home office, needed final review. She padded down the villa's marble hallways, greeting the security staff who'd become familiar faces. In Dante's office, she began searching through his desk drawers for the inventory lists they'd prepared together. Her hand brushed against something in the back of the bottom drawer, a slight click followed by the soft sound of a panel sliding open. A hidden compartment emerged, containing a thick manila folder marked simply, Russo, Matteo. Her father's name in stark black letters made her pause. She knew she should close the drawer and walk away, but 20 years of questions about the man who'd shaped her life through absence proved too powerful to resist. With trembling fingers, Valentina opened the folder. The first items were surveillance photos, herself in New York, going about her daily routine. The timestamps showed dates from months before she'd ever met Dante. Her stomach clenched as she continued reading. Detailed reports outlined her bakery's finances, her mother's activities, her daily schedule. Most devastating were the flight documents. Her original commercial flight to Naples hadn't been canceled by chance. Salvatore operatives had arranged it, paying airport staff to deliberately misdirect her to Dante's private jet. Page after page revealed a methodical plan to bring the daughter of Matteo Russo into Dante's sphere of influence. Her father's former associates still controlled millions in stolen Salvatore funds. Dante had orchestrated every moment, from their accidental meeting to her mother's kidnapping, as elaborate leverage to recover his family's money. Valentina sat heavily in Dante's leather chair, her world tilting sideways. Every tender moment, every shared confession, every passionate night, had it all been calculated manipulation? The paintings of full-figured women she'd believed represented his genuine attraction. Were they just research to understand her vulnerabilities? She moved through the villa in a daze, packing essential items while avoiding the security camera's direct view. The skills she'd learned observing Dante's protection protocols now served to help her escape them. She withdrew the maximum amount of cash from her account, enough to disappear without leaving an electronic trail. In Dante's office, she placed the opened folder prominently on his desk. Her hand shook as she wrote a final note. The debt is paid. Don't follow me. The words felt hollow compared to the magnitude of his betrayal. Using the staff's lunch rotation to cover her departure, Valentina slipped away from the villa that had briefly felt like home. She used cash for a series of taxi rides in different directions, eventually making her way to a small coastal town where she could arrange discreet transportation back to America. 3 months later, she stood in her modest New York commercial kitchen preparing custom orders for the small but loyal clientele she'd rebuilt. The space was a far cry from the elegant pasticceria that had almost been hers, but it represented honest work, untainted by manipulation. Alone in her tiny apartment that evening, Valentina's hand drifted to the slight curve of her belly, a secret she'd confirmed just days before discovering Dante's deception. The timing felt cruel, learning she carried his child in the same week she'd uncovered his elaborate revenge plot. She moved through her evening routine mechanically, trying not to think of how she'd imagined sharing this news with him. In her dreams, she'd pictured his strong hands cradling her growing belly, his fierce protectiveness extended to their child. Now she was determined her baby would never know their father was the man who'd orchestrated their mother's downfall for revenge. Preparing for bed, Valentina didn't notice the dark sedan parked across the street, its tinted windows oriented toward her apartment. Her thoughts were consumed with tomorrow's orders and doctor's appointments, the mundane details of rebuilding a life from ashes of betrayal. The October sunrise filtered through Valentina's modest apartment windows, casting a gentle glow across her growing belly. 5 months of pregnancy had transformed her body, the curve now impossible to hide beneath even her loosest chef's coats. She traced small circles over the bump while reviewing the day's delivery schedule on her phone. The small bakery business she'd rebuilt barely covered her expenses, but she'd learned to be creative with resources. Her studio apartment felt worlds away from Dante's coastal villa, though memories of Italian sunsets and his protective embrace still haunted her dreams. She'd wake, reaching for him, only to find cold sheets and the distant sounds of New York traffic. Those moments of weakness frustrated her most, that even after his betrayal, her body remembered his touch. The morning sickness had finally subsided, replaced by constant cravings for the traditional Italian pastries Nonna had taught her to make. Each time she baked them now, the familiar scents brought bittersweet memories of those cooking lessons, of feeling truly accepted despite her curves. She pushed those thoughts aside, focusing instead on the custom birthday cake due for delivery. When the knock came at 7 a.m., Valentina expected to see Jenny, her part-time assistant. Instead, 2 broad-shouldered men in expensive suits filled her doorway. Their dead-eyed stares triggered instant recognition, the same cold calculation she'd seen in Calabrese soldiers during that ill-fated monastery meeting. "Miss Russo," the taller one said, his accent thick with menace. "We need you to come with us." She tried slamming the door, but they easily forced their way inside. Valentina backed away, one hand protectively cradling her belly, while the other reached for anything she could use as a weapon. Her fingers closed around a heavy rolling pin. "The baby changes everything," the second man said, his eyes fixed on her pregnant belly. "Salvatore's heir is worth more than any territory." Valentina swung the rolling pin with all her strength, catching the first man in the shoulder. Her pregnancy had made her fiercer, not weaker. She fought with the desperation of a mother protecting her child, landing several solid hits before they overpowered her. To their credit, they were careful with her belly, even as they restrained her arms. Their grip was precise, painful enough to control but not enough to bruise. Professional. That scared her more than brutality would have. "Please," she said, hating the tremor in her voice. "The baby." "Will be perfectly safe," the taller man assured her, "until Salvatore agrees to our terms." They began dragging her toward the door. Valentina struggled strategically, knowing she couldn't break free, but determined to leave evidence of her resistance. She knocked over a lamp, scattered papers, anything to mark her path. The apartment exploded into violence so suddenly that Valentina's brain took several seconds to process what she was seeing. One moment the Calabrese men were in control. The next they were falling, blood spraying across her cream-colored walls. Dante stood in her doorway like something out of her darkest dreams, terrible and beautiful in his fury. He moved with lethal precision, each strike calculated for maximum efficiency. Yet even in his rage, his body constantly shifted to keep Valentina shielded from any potential harm. Behind him, Marco and a tactical team swept through the building with military efficiency. The entire attack lasted less than 30 seconds, leaving both Calabrese enforcers eliminated and her apartment secured. Only then did Dante's rigid control crack. He fell to his knees before her, his hands shaking as they hovered over her pregnant belly without touching, seeking permission she hadn't granted. The vulnerability in his expression stripped away months of doubt. "I've been watching over you since the day you left," he confessed, his voice rough with emotion. "Not to reclaim you, to protect you both." Within an hour, they were in a secure Salvatore property outside the city, a modernist fortress disguised as a corporate retreat. In a sun-filled office, overlooking manicured grounds, Dante finally shared the full truth. "The documents you found were real," he admitted, spreading files across his desk. "I tracked your father for years. Initially, I planned to use you as leverage against his former associates still hiding Salvatore money." He showed her surveillance photos, financial records, the original plan. Then he revealed what she hadn't found: orders abandoning the revenge scheme within days of their first meeting, long before any romantic connection developed. The airport staff's misdirection wasn't targeting you specifically, he explained. It's standard procedure to clear civilians from my secure hangar. Your actual boarding was genuine coincidence. We had only planned surveillance at that point. Valentina studied the documentation, her hands unconsciously protective over their child as she processed this new information. The timeline supported his claims. The revenge plan had been abandoned almost immediately after they met. I deserved your distrust, Dante said quietly, but not your belief that what grew between us was false. Nothing in my life has been more real. He placed a thick folder before her containing legal documents. As she read through them, her eyes widened. He had transferred ownership of all his legitimate businesses into her name, along with the family estate. You're giving me your empire, she whispered. I'm placing my life in your hands, he corrected, rather than demanding you return to mine. Through the open windows of their cliffside villa, the summer breeze carried the scent of lemon blossoms and sea salt. Valentina stood before the antique mirror in what was now their bedroom, adjusting the delicate lace veil that had belonged to Nonna Salvatore. The past year had transformed her in ways beyond the physical changes of motherhood. She moved with quiet confidence, her curves elegant in the custom-designed wedding gown that celebrated rather than concealed her figure. A soft coo drew her attention to the bassinet where 4-month-old Sophia dozed, tiny fingers curled around her blanket. Their daughter was the perfect blend of them both. Dante's striking gray eyes set in Valentina's gentle features, already showing signs of her mother's artistic sensitivity and her father's fierce determination. She's fighting sleep again, Elena observed, entering with Sophia's backup outfit. The past year had softened her mother's initial resistance to their relationship as she witnessed Dante's devotion, not just to Valentina, but to their entire family. His protection had expanded to include Elena's security and comfort, ensuring she could be part of their lives without fear. Just like her father, Valentina smiled, remembering Dante's tendency to work through exhaustion rather than yield to rest. Always afraid to miss something important. Through the window, she could see the villa's terrace being transformed for their celebration. White flowers draped every surface, their elegance understated against the dramatic coastal backdrop. The guest list was intimate: Dante's siblings Lorenzo and Bianca, his grandmother, and their most trusted associates. No outsiders to witness this formal recognition of the bond they'd built through truth and second chances. The legitimization of their business empire had progressed steadily over the past year. Valentina's pasticcerie chain had expanded across Italy, each location more successful than the last. Her innovative designs and authentic connection with customers provided perfect cover for the gradual shift of Salvatore assets into legal enterprises. Dante had discovered unexpected satisfaction in building something lasting, rather than merely maintaining power through fear. Sophia stirred, and Valentina lifted her daughter with practiced grace, breathing in her sweet baby scent. The weight of her child in her arms still filled her with wonder. This tangible proof of love overcoming suspicion, of trust reborn from betrayal. It's time, Elena announced, helping adjust Valentina's veil one final time. Are you ready? The question carried deeper meaning than mere ceremony. This wedding formalized a union that had already been tested by fire, strengthened by forgiveness, and proven through shared purpose. Valentina nodded, her smile reflecting absolute certainty. The terrace was bathed in golden light as she emerged. Dante waited beneath an arch of white roses, his usual dangerous grace, softened by evident emotion. He had abandoned his customary black suit for dark blue that matched the sea behind him, though his powerful presence remained unmistakable. Their vows were brief, spoken in both Italian and English, a bridge between their worlds, just as they had become a bridge between violence and legitimacy. Sophia remained quiet in her grandmother's arms throughout the ceremony, as if sensing the significance of the moment. During the intimate reception that followed, Dante drew Valentina away from their guests. He led her to his studio, a space now rarely used for anything but painting her. The room held countless canvases chronicling their journey: Valentina in early pregnancy, her growing belly, their first moments with Sophia. But today he unveiled something new. The masterpiece took Valentina's breath away. The portrait captured her holding Sophia, but it was more than mere representation. He had painted her as she truly was, powerful and beautiful, radiating confidence and grace. The brushstrokes conveyed both strength and tenderness, highlighting the duality she had taught him to embrace in himself. You never tamed the monster, Dante said softly, his fingers entwining with hers as they studied the painting. You showed him he could be both, protector and lover, father and leader. The portrait revealed not just Valentina's physical beauty, but the spirit that had challenged a dangerous man to become worthy of love rather than merely feared. Every detail spoke of deep understanding, the subtle lift of her chin showing determination, the gentle curve of her smile suggesting wisdom, the protective yet relaxed way she held their daughter demonstrating natural maternal grace. As they rejoined their celebration under the Italian stars, the sea breeze carrying music and laughter across the terrace, Dante drew her close. His words, whispered against her ear, had transformed from possessive claim to sacred vow. "You're mine to protect, mine to cherish, mine to worship. Forever." Valentina turned in his arms, her response completing their journey. "And you are mine to humanize, mine to challenge, and mine to love. The man beneath the monster, the father of my child, the only one who ever saw me exactly as I am." Sophia's delighted laugh drew their attention to where she rested in Nonna Salvatore's lap, reaching for the twinkling lights strung above the terrace. Their daughter represented everything they had built together: strength tempered by compassion, power guided by love, a future where protection didn't require violence. The gathering was small, but filled with genuine joy. Lorenzo chatted with Elena about American business opportunities, while Bianca showed Sophia a small gift she had brought: a silver rattle that had belonged to their mother. Marco maintained discreet security from the villa's perimeter, his presence ensuring their celebration remained private and protected.